first of all, technology, is advancing year by year, that's for sure. Now, I think that one common denominator here is the goal is to get as much bits in a hertz as possible, while obviously at the same time reducing the price. Now, there are also, I think we need to differentiate here between two segments. Let's talk about the data segment first, right? I think that the next big thing will be HTS or high throughput satellites. The big question here is where the market for those spot beams will be. The price will be reduced for sure because of the frequency reuse and smaller spot beams. Now, oil and gas is one of the markets for sure that will benefit from that. I'm also quite confident that in the next few years, everybody will expect that long distance flights, people will have internet access there, throughout the flights. So this is one of the things where I think that HTS will definitely come in handy. The other thing which is also reducing the cost in data segment is higher modulation. DVB-S2X and NS4 modulations will definitely be implemented there. One thing that I also need to mention here is that with the data segment, it's much easier to implement new technologies because they're not so dependent on the consumer market. Now let's move to the broadcasting segment, right? Here it's a bit more difficult to do that because ultimately the broadcasting segment depends on the consumer market and is very tightly related to it or closely bound to it, right? Now, in the last few years, of course, we've seen the emergence of HEVC, usually, hand in hand with the 4K or ultra high definition televisions. The emergence of both has been rather slow. There has been another advancement here which I think I need to mention, and that is when it comes to broadcasting, you also need to differentiate between, or segment rather, where the transmissions are going to. There are certain markets in which, MPEG-4 is and DVB-2S is completely, standard, right? And there are still markets which still rely on the good old DVB-S combined with MPEG-2. Now, the MPEG-2 codec, if you look at the encoding part, is pretty much the development is done. You cannot refine it any further. But we have seen in the last few years that you can still fine-tune and optimize MPEG-4. So today, for example, a MPEG-4 HD channel, which occupies, let's say, in a stat max from 4 to 5 megabits, actually gives you the same quality as an MPEG-4 HD encoder did a few years ago with 8 megabits. So there's an improvement there as well. So I think, this type of advancements are what are pushing the price down and, making the customers happier. One thing that I didn't mention before is that the emergence of software encoders. We've seen in the last few years that normal CPUs combined with fast GPUs actually enable to encode an enormous amount of channels in all the codecs. This is also, basically making the customers happier because the price again is getting reduced. Now, again, it all depends on the market in which, or on the platform which you serve, right? I am confident that sooner or later software encoders will become the standard. Are we there today? Not really, or let me put it like that, not in all the segments. If you want premium HD MPEG-4 channels, we still rely on the hardware encoders, which are much more expensive. But with the emergence of the software encoders, and I'm sure that the future is software encoders for sure, this will reduce the price further. Here again, I must go back to the software encoding part. Why? Because a software encoder is not necessarily purely meant for satellite distribution or fiber distribution. Or the same box, the same chassis can actually be used for, for the satellite distribution, to watch on a normal set-top box television set/television set, and it can also be used to encode these channels for handheld devices, for all the Androids and Apple stuff that is out there. And again, this reduces the complexity enormously. Yes, and I would call that virtual encoding or hybrid encoding. What I mean by that is, currently, if you use software and hardware encoding and stuff like that, it's not really compatible with the one and another. I see the future, is if the development in terms of a hybrid system, where you utilize and harness both the power of the software and the hardware encoders, and where you would actually assign one or the other where you need them. And if I go one step further, there is the possibility of actually also utilizing the power of CPUs which are not in your facilities at all. This would be, it's a bit far-fetched future, I'm sure, and obviously it wouldn't be practical for all the uses. For example, you couldn't utilize a CPU which is sitting in Los Angeles and your facilities are based in Europe to do live encoding because of the latency, but for sure you could do it for VOD, catch-up TVs and stuff like that. So we'll see if the future will go there, but it would be nice.